So, Marathon's peak player count just plummeted to an insultingly low 28,000 players on Steam, and considering that GameRant put out an article just 3 days ago citing a 36,000 player peak, yeah, it's officially time to hit the panic button over at Bungie. Western AAA studios are completely falling apart right now, and Eastern developers are casually walking in and stealing their lunch money. I mean, look at the numbers, dude. Marathon is supposed to be Sony's multi-billion-dollar flagship multiplayer game, but 70% of its player base is sitting on PC. That means PlayStation console gamers aren't even touching this thing. And yet, despite the game actively bleeding out in front of our eyes, Western game journalists are out here doing Olympic-level gymnastics to defend it. IGN literally gave Marathon a 9 out of 10, but slapped Crimson Desert with a 6 out of 10. It honestly just seems like these guys are applying their own clown makeup with every passing game release, because the media bias trying to prop up these Western corporate disasters is just embarrassing. And hey, if you're also tired of game journalists trying to gaslight you into playing uninspired filler, do yourself a favor and hit that subscribe button. Let's actually talk about that IGN review situation for a second, because it's the perfect example of how rigged the Western gaming industry feels right now. So Crimson Desert comes out and yeah, it had some performance hiccups at launch. Players were complaining about the controls and some inventory management issues, and IGN rushed their 6 out of 10 review out immediately, punishing the game before any major patches could fix the issues. And, well, that's fair enough, right? Review the game that is right in front of you. But then we look at Marathon. Bungie literally sent out instructions asking reviewers to hold off on finalizing their scores until the quote, in-game update dropped. And IGN just happily complied. They sat on their hands, waited for Bungie to patch the game to their liking, and then dropped a glowing 9 out of 10 review for an extraction shooter that has already lost more than half of its player base. It's just incredibly shady. When an Eastern studio drops a massive single-player passion project, the Western media tears it apart for every little flaw. But when a Western studio drops a predatory live service shooter that costs around a supposed $200+ million that nobody asked for, the media holds their hands and guides them to a high review score. But the crazy part is that gamers aren't falling for it anymore. Public sentiment for Crimson Desert has skyrocketed because Pearl Abyss actually put their hands down and fixed the game. It's selling like hotcakes right now. They crossed 4 million copies sold because people are realizing that the game is just pure unadulterated fun. You can literally ride dragons and WWE powerbomb bandits off of cliffs. Meanwhile, Marathon is a sterile, overly sweaty corridor simulator catered for a hardcore audience, and its fans are voicing these concerns. Asian gaming companies are absolutely killing it these days because they're actually focusing on the one thing Western studios have completely forgotten about: making a fun video game. Look at Capcom right now. In a sea of microtransaction-filled battle pass grinding multiplayer traps, Capcom just pushed out Resident Evil Requiem, and it's an absolute undead masterpiece. They didn't try to force a cooperative extraction mode into it. They didn't try to sell us a neon pink weapon charm for Leon's revolver. They just crafted a pulse-pounding, terrifying narrative experience that respects your time. And it's not just Capcom. Look at what happened over the last couple of years. Game Science came completely out of nowhere with Black Myth Wukong and shattered Steam concurrent player records. Shift Up dropped Stellar Blade and gave us a polished, gorgeous action game that didn't hold back on giving gamers the exact kind of beautiful character designs they wanted. NeoWiz, a Korean studio most people have never even heard of, dropped Lies of P and basically beat Western developers at their own Bloodborne-style game. These Eastern studios are treating gaming like an entertainment medium. They want to give you a complete package on day one that you will enjoy. Meanwhile, Western AAA studios are treating gaming like a predatory wallet drainer. They don't want to make art, they want to make a platform. And it's blowing up in their faces spectacularly. Just look at the absolute state of Western shooters right now. Call of Duty Black Ops 7 came out and got completely roasted alive by its own hardcore fans because Activision treated the single-player campaign more like an introduction to the endgame rather than its own actual unique experience. Oh, and making it another futuristic shooter with trippy visuals, while continuing their trend of predatory microtransactions, really didn't help things that much. And then you have Battlefield 6. Now, Battlefield 6 actually launched pretty big. It shattered records and mopped the floor with Call of Duty for a hot minute. But what did EA do? The corporate money counters fired the actual talent. They gutted the development studios right after the game launched to make their quarterly profits look better for their investors. And now, Battlefield 6 is collapsing in front of our eyes. The servers are a mess, the updates are non-existent, new content is drip-fed at a slow pace, and the community is abandoning ship because there's nobody left at the studio to actually maintain the game. And don't even get me started on Ubisoft. They officially pulled the plug on Assassin's Creed Shadows after just 1 year. That game got memed into absolute oblivion. Between the terrible Attack on Titan crossover event that looked like a PlayStation 3 game and the overly grindy progression systems designed specifically to sell you time saver bundles, gamers just walked away. Ubisoft spent years turning their unique stealth franchise into a bloated damage sponge RPG, and when the market finally rejected it, they just threw their hands up and abandoned the project entirely. This is the core difference between the East and the West right now. Western executives design their games in spreadsheets. They look at whatever trend was popular 3 years ago, hire a bunch of calculated consultants to make sure the game appeals to a mythical, magical, modern audience, and then they force their developers to build a $200 million product around the Battle Pass. Eastern developers seem to design their games around a creative vision, unified in their core belief to present a unique product that entertains rather than preying on its consumers. I mean, look at the history of Crimson Desert. Pearl Abyss originally started developing that game as an MMORPG. It was supposed to be a prequel to Black Desert Online, but somewhere during development, they looked at the market, saw that gamers were getting completely exhausted by the endless grind of multiplayer games, and then they did something that a Western studio would never have the guts to do. They pivoted. They completely scrapped the MMO aspect and turned it into a massive single-player action-adventure game. Can you imagine a Western publisher actually doing this? If EA or Sony had an MMO in development, they would force it out the door even if it was a broken mess, and then try to milk the whales for the next 6 months. And if all else fails, they would just shut the studio down. Actually, the current state of Western gaming really reminds me of Capcom's dark era back in 2012. If you guys remember, during the PS3 and Xbox 360 generation, Capcom almost ran their entire company into the ground because they were desperately chasing the Western gaming trends. They looked at the massive sales of Call of Duty and Gears of War, and they told their developers to start westernizing everything. So all their games had cut content that was later repackaged as DLC and microtransactions. And updates, well, updates were sold as entirely brand new games. Capcom had alienated their core fan bases, and their stocks had started to plummet. But Capcom eventually learned their lesson. They restructured and focused on making high-quality, terrifying single-player games again. And now they're basically printing money. Western studios right now are currently stuck in that 2012 Capcom era. Sony, Ubisoft, and Bungie are all alienating their core fan bases to chase a live service audience that is already busy playing other games. Sony paid almost $4 billion for Bungie. They wanted Bungie to be their guiding light for this massive live service push. And the result is Marathon, a game sitting at 28,000 players that PlayStation owners don't even want to download. And instead of looking in the mirror and realizing their strategy is flawed, Western publishers would just blame the gamers. They'll say we have toxic expectations, or that game development is just too expensive now. No dude, game development isn't weren't too expensive. You just bloat your studios with middle management, spent half a decade chasing dead trends, and refuse to release a game unless it can be monetized for the next 10 years. Gamers are voting with their wallets now, and the message is crystal clear. We want passionately crafted experiences. We want games that respect our time and our intelligence. If Asian studios are the only ones willing to provide that with games like Resident Evil Requiem, Stellar Blade, and Crimson Desert, and a lot more to be honest, then Western studios are gonna have to keep bleeding out until there's nothing left. And honestly, I won't shed a single tear for them. Anyway dude, I'm gonna go play some games that don't require me to log into a server just to navigate the main menu. This is RageWatch and I'm out. Thanks for watching.